Hi, it's Simon again, and welcome back to Stop Smoking Now, the story of how I went from smoking 60 Marlboro Reds a day to becoming a non-smoker overnight. If you're thinking of stopping smoking, well, you've definitely come to the right place. In the last video, we revisited the fact that if you haven't given up smoking yet for either health or wealth reasons, you probably never will. So what would persuade you to quit the evil weed? Maybe if you could come to terms with the fact that you don't really enjoy smoking as much as you think you do, if at all, that would help. On the penultimate slide of the last video, I posited the notion that you enjoy very few, if any, of the cigarettes that you smoke every day. What's more, I suggested that rather than smoking a cigarette for the enjoyment you derive, you actually smoke it in order to feed your habit. You are, in fact, a drug addict. And so was I for 30 years. I also suggested that you make a mental note of how many cigarettes you smoke every day, and, more importantly, when you smoke them, where you smoke them, and what triggers the urge to smoke. Well, if you haven't already done so, let's replay the day in your head. Let's look at a typical day. You get up in the morning, you have 1 or 2 cigarettes with your tea or coffee to kickstart the day. You get showered and dressed and jump into the car, you light a cigarette. If you're travelling by bus, you have a cigarette while you're waiting at the bus stop. You get to your workplace, and because you can't smoke inside, you have another cigarette just before 9 o'clock to top up the nicotine. You do some work, and you have a cigarette at 10 o'clock. You do some more work, and then you have another cigarette with your friend John, who always takes his break at 11 o'clock. Thus you can share a smoking moment and talk about the football. You then have a report to write for your boss, after which you have another cigarette as a reward. In fact, so far, the only cigarette you have had that wasn't on autopilot was the reward cigarette, and even that one could be fairly accurately predicted. We get to lunch break, you have a cigarette. You eat your sandwich and have a drink, then you have a cigarette. You read the newspapers for 20 minutes. It's now 1:55, just time for a cigarette before going back to your desk or wherever at 2 o'clock. Of course, everything stops for tea at 3 o'clock, so you pop outside for a cigarette. You're on the downhill stretch now, so one last cigarette at 4 o'clock and you'll be on your way at 5. It's 5 o'clock, time to go home, so you jump in the car and light a cigarette, or have one at the bus stop. Maybe you have a cigarette as you drive past a certain landmark every day, because you know that's about halfway. I know I used to. Your evening smoking routine will depend on a number of factors, whether you are single or with a partner, whether you smoke indoors or whether you go outside, whether or not you have any children, and if so, whether you are concerned about setting a bad example. To my shame, I wasn't. Whether you like a beer, wine, brandy, etc. in the evening, and whether you have a social event, and where that event is. Obviously, if you're in a theatre, your smoking habits will be different than if you're in a pub. As I said, there are just too many factors for the evening to go through all the permutations. What I can tell you, however, is this. Your evening smoking routine will be every bit as predictable as your daytime smoking routine. Only the triggers will vary. You'll probably have a cigarette when you get home. You'll have one after you've finished your supper. You'll have one with a glass of wine. You'll have one with a cup of coffee. You'll have one 5 minutes before your favourite TV show starts, and you'll have one just before bedtime. In other words, 19 of the 20 cigarettes you smoked today were totally predictable. They were all smoked at the same time and in the same place as the ones you smoked yesterday. That must be the definition of habit or addiction. If you can relate to any part of this story, if you sincerely want to stop smoking, and if you feel that I may be able to help, watch out for my videos over the next couple of weeks. Check out my blog at stopsmokingnow.me, come and visit me on Facebook, and please share this with anyone else you know who may be considering stopping smoking. Thanks for watching, and look out for my next video soon.